Arcelor Mittal is the second largest producer of steel in the world, second only to a Chinese company. And considering that most of those Chinese companies could plausibly be considered as state companies, you might be able to say that ArcelorMittal is the largest independent private producer of steel in the world. That's saying something. That's a company with some gravitas. And this massive steel producer had a steel mill right here in the pristine island of Trinidad, in the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That steel mill closed down in 2016, and there was quite a bit of furor about that steel mill closing down. There was a bit of bacchanal going on there because many of the workers who were working there for a considerable period of time found that they had no payout to get upon the closure of that plant. The whole thing, as many of the things are in modern days, the whole thing became a legal mess. It was a legal issue, really and truly. I believe it was, they wanted lower gas prices out of Trinidad and Tobago, and they weren't able to get that. Some of the employees were demanding higher pay right at that same time. They took them to the industrial court and they won that. And then the very next day, Mittal called from the United Kingdom and said, you know what, let's wrap up shop. The thing is, of course, many of the people who would have not been paid out, who would have seen it as they were deprived of something that was due to them, that was supposed to be their right as workers there for so long, many of those workers feel very hard done by. And many of them hold some negative feeling for, in particular, the lawyers who were in charge of allowing Mittal to get away with this, as they would see it. Mittal had some skillful lawyers that were able to work their way around the industrial relations legislature and the employee protection legislature, and somehow still they were able to get Mittal out of paying this. For Mittal and the lawyers, a job well done, I will suppose, but you could understand why on the workers' side they're thinking, I don't like that very much. And you would be thinking that the government, the duty of the government would be to ensure that legally a company should not be able to do that. You don't want it to be that a company can come in from foreign, a foreign company comes into your country and they buy one of your resources, because the steel plant was built by the state in Trinidad and Tobago. It was bought by ArcelorMittal. You don't want it to be that they can buy it, employ the people in the country, make some money from it, and when they leave, the people have no real recourse. That's not good. You want it to be that your legislative agenda as a government, what the laws that you want to put into the books, you want that to be laws to protect those workers too. So it's very interesting when you look at who the people are that write those laws. And wouldn't it be just so unfortunate, just a crying shame, if it is that the same people that are so skilled at finding the loopholes for the laws are the same ones who write the laws? Now, that could make sense. On one side, you're thinking, okay, if the guys can find the loopholes, these would be the best guys to close the loopholes. But at the same time, if you're talking about employing them for just temporary periods, a 5-year period, or if so much, and then they have to go back out there to work, you could wonder, would it be in their best interest to make sure that there are no legal loopholes? Are you employing people who would have a vested interest in making sure the legal loopholes are as present and easily identifiable as possible? And then, when you look at some of the conflicts of interest, things get very interesting. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Before we dive into some of those stories, hit that like button if you have not done that yet. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. What do you think about who the lawmakers are in this country? Do you think there's too much of a conflict of interest, or is it just coincidence? We're going to see right that. Subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. The Guardian article from Wednesday, November 9th. Point Lisa steel plant to be restarted 6 years after closure. So yes, the steel plant is coming back. In what appears to be a major coup for the Keith Rowley administration, finally, the iron and steel plant at the Point Lisas Industrial Estate is set to restart production under new owners and could lead to the creation of hundreds of high-paying jobs. The Business Guardian has confirmed from multiple sources and has seen documents that show that all is in place for the restart of the plant, pending final approval from the cabinet, which is due to consider it today. The proposers are hoping that Public Utility Minister Marvin Gonzalez will finally take the note to cabinet so that TNTech can proceed to negotiate a power purchase agreement with TNT Iron and Steel. The liquidator has given his approval for the plant to be transferred to the new owners, TNT Iron and Steel. Now, I'm curious to know who those owners exactly are. I haven't been able to find out yet. I'm sure that news will come out in time, but that will be very curious. Part of the reason it will be very curious is because they weren't the first and only bidders. Way back 4 years ago, in long time days of 2018, there were bidders for that very same plant. New Iron withdraws bid for steel plant. This is an article from September of 2018. New Iron Unlimited withdrew its 20 million bid for the former Arcelor Mittal steel plant on Friday because of bureaucratic holdups, Newsday has learnt. The government was giving them the runaround reportedly. They were waiting on the Ministry of Finance for a foreign investor license, and they had finally got fed up of being asked to provide assurances to the state. It was quoted that the liquidator himself was saying about that deal that he had previously admitted to the Newsday that the bid had been held up because the government agencies handling approvals had been putting New Iron through the ringer. I find that very curious. So why was New Iron not able to go through with their bid, but TNT Iron and Steel was? Why is it that it seems like the government favors New Iron? Well, not New Iron, my bad. The government favors TNT Iron and Steel over this New Iron company. Was there a reason for this? Is there any vested interest inside of TNT Iron and Steel? That will be curious to be found out, and I have no doubt that eventually it will come to the fore. I just hope that enough people continue paying attention when it does. It is expected that the steel plant will have fewer employees than the Arcelor Mittal plant that employed on a daily basis up to 2,000 workers using mainly contract employees. The proponents of TNT Iron and Steel expect to employ between 700 and 1,000 people. Initially, it proposed to see 250 permanent jobs being created. The Rowley administration, though, had been wrongly criticized for the initial closure of the plant and the failure to protect workers. That was a main criticism. Not just you close down this flagship plant, well, they didn't close it down, but not just that the plant was closed down under your tenure, but not none, but a large number of workers who spent a long period of time in that plant working for that company were not protected. And who do you blame but the government? Many people speak about what's the government's role in so many things. The government's role isn't so much building box screens, isn't so much even educating children. More importantly than the government having the Ministry of Education is the government writing sensible legislation so that there are workers' rights in this country and that workers are protected, their rights are protected. So if the government isn't doing that job, they are failing at a pretty basic duty. And I think that's an opinion I've had for some time now. I consider it that many governments, similar to NGOs on a whole, many governments, they tend to, over time, reach much further than their mandate should be. Governments get into preschool and childcare and what mothers do. They get really, really intimate into people's lives, and the basic things that they're supposed to be doing, like in Trinidad and Tobago, maintaining the roads and protecting the workers, they aren't doing that. Originally built by the then government of Dr. Eric Williams, the iron and steel plant has had its shares of ups and downs, and it was Arcelor Mittal's chairman and CEO Lakshmi Mittal who eventually in 1994 purchased the plant for US $70 million. But in 2016, after failing to get natural gas and electricity rates at prices it wanted, Mittal simply closed the plant and left. It meant the 600 plus permanent workers, many who have since died, lost their jobs without getting a cent as separation benefits. This reality is not lost on the mind of the president of the Steelworkers Union of TNT, Timothy Bailey, who blamed, and listen to this, who blamed current Attorney General Reginald Armour with helping Mittal leave the country without paying workers benefits by finding loopholes in the legislation, which have still not been fixed. If you want to find out about that, there was a case reaching straight to the Supreme Court. As with most things reaching the Supreme Court, it was very well written down, and you have a great account of everything that was done there. The case started at the Industrial Court. They appealed it to the Appeal Court and straight up to the Privy Council. And this was the basis for not paying the workers their separation benefits. And these workers are still holding that in heart, thinking that this man, who is currently our Attorney General in charge of overseeing the writing of the legislation for the country, was the man who was the head of the legal team. You could see that right there. He's right there at the top, Reginald T.A. Armour, in the case outline from the Privy Council there. He was the man in charge of finding the loopholes and using them to not allow the workers to get their benefits in the first place. The thing is, I understand the legal profession. That is what their job is. If a company hires you, they ask you if this can be done. You look into the legislation, into the constitution as it is, and you tell them if it can be done. If you think it can be done, you do it. That's your job. But there is a little balancing act there when you attempt to now get into the governmental side of things. I would like to know, what is your general philosophy on things? Is your philosophy that legal is the boundary of moral, or is your philosophy that moral should guide the boundaries of legal? Because if legal is your boundary for moral, I am kind of worried about you writing laws for the country. What do you write the laws based on? If the only thing that justifies morality to you is legality. If there is a legal loophole and you could find it, nothing is wrong with that in your view. And I could understand that view, but I'm worried for you writing laws. What do you write laws based on? And if it's vice versa, that you have a view of what is good, what is just, what is moral, and then you would like to see laws built on that, that is something more favorable. That is something that I would like to get behind. You'd be thinking, okay, how do I frame this law? How do I frame this piece of legislation in a way to make sure that we get the best result for everyone out there? If your view is that legal is moral, I don't see why you would care to frame legislation in that way. And then I am worried about you being the chief framer of my legislation in this country. And things get even a little more shaky when you see it was not just Mr. Reginald Armour that was involved in this. We go back here to an article from since 2016, the first year of PNM, that would be into the second year of PNM governance. The April of 2016. Did you work for Arcelor Mittal? This was a question asked by the opposition leader back then, Miss Prasad Bisasa. She was asking that of the San Fernando West MP, Mr. Faris Al-Rawi. She was asking him two questions. One, did he work for Arcelor Mittal? And two, did Arcelor Mittal finance his campaign? Serious questions. Mr. Al-Rawi eventually denied both of those allegations, but there was a caveat in there in that, yes, he did work for Arcelor Mittal, but according to him, he left as soon as he entered government. But isn't it a strange coincidence that the man who was their lawyer and legal advisor before was the previous Attorney General, and when you're switching him out from Attorney General, he is switched to the next legal advisor from that same company? I just find that it's just a strange coincidence. Back then, the opposition leader also had questions for the Prime Minister. Prasad Bisasa also posed similar questions to the Prime Minister, saying his private attorney, and look who his private attorney was back then, Reginald Armour, interesting, was also a legal advisor to Arcelor Mittal. Armour ceased being Rowley's attorney when he was elected as president of the Law Association. Did he, Armour, help to advise them how to go about avoiding having to pay termination benefits to the workers? And Faris, did he advise the company to take legal action of declaring bankruptcy in order to deprive workers of their benefits? The allegation here, and this is since 2016, this was before Mr. Armour ever was Attorney General. The allegation here was that the two attorneys in charge and responsible for working the legal system and allowing Arcelor Mittal to skate out of the country without paying separation and termination benefits to their workers, those two lawyers were the next two attorneys general. That is just such a strange coincidence. I mean, it could be a coincidence, but you must understand that you're telling me that if you pick two lawyers at random, well, it shouldn't be at random. If you pick two excellent lawyers, because that's who you'd want as Attorney General, if you pick two excellent lawyers, they just so happen to both have represented the same company. And now, if it is that the allegations against these lawyers are that these are the type of lawyers that attempt to find loopholes, then maybe these might not be the exact lawyers to be public servants also. Maybe those lawyers are fine to have in the general legal system. You want some lawyers who are cutthroat and who would make sure that they are holding legislation to the fire to make sure that the legislators are writing sound legislation. That's the job of the lawyer. You're making sure that anyone who goes up there, the legislation they write makes sense, and you're testing it daily in the court. Fine. But when you have them switching positions, switching from being the person testing the loopholes of the legislation to the person writing the loopholes of the legislation, there's an understandable wonder about conflicts of interest. And it's not like this person is hired. Okay, if it was that they represented Arcelor Mittal back then, but now they have been hired permanently to work for the government for the rest of their natural lives. That might have been one thing, but these men very likely, after they finish their stint in governance, they may go out there to practice law again. If they are going out there to practice law again, what kind of law are they going to practice? Are they going to practice pro bono civil law to try and help the regular person in the streets, or are they going back to the regular thing of representing companies? And if they are going back to represent companies and those companies pay them top dollar, do you think they are going to write laws that ensure these companies can be found liable when they should be found liable? Or are they going to continue having laws that have a little backdoor they can escape with? There's a former Attorney General in Trinidad and Tobago that since he has left being an Attorney General, he has picked up, furthered his reputation as being really good at fighting the state. He is one of the number one people for fighting the state. If you go out there and you ask someone, you tell someone, I have a case, I have a lawsuit I want to bring against the government of Trinidad and Tobago, they may tell you, yeah, go find that former Attorney General. And it just makes me squint. It just makes me squint. How could you honestly tell me that you are right now manipulating and taking advantage of the spaces and loopholes in the legislation, but still honestly tell me that while you were there, you had no idea about these loopholes and you had no idea how to fix them? Is that true? It reminds me of a medical doctor we had who was our former Minister of Health. He was the Minister of Health for quite some time, and after he finished as Minister of Health, he went back to his private practice. And what would you know, an advertisement on the television, he is saying that his private practice has the only kind of a specific machine really needed for a certain kind of illness. He has that machine, specially the only one in the Caribbean. That seems kind of strange to me. If you knew that this machine was so needed in Trinidad and Tobago, when you were Minister of Health, why didn't you go out there and buy the machine? It could nearly seem like you're using your position to find out where the missing piece is, and then you go there to be the missing piece and make a lot of money doing it. And when you see things in that way, you start to get the feeling like it's nearly a defeated feeling. You could get a defeated feeling where you're looking and it seems like it's an oligarchy up there. It's a group of people, they all know each other. It's a small club and you're not in it. And they know each other and they make things and suit things in their way to make sure it works, and they continue circling each other in that circle. You look at this one's private company and see that one's a director of it, an independent senator here, another senator there, government minister there. Some things just seem a little strange. But tell me, what do you think? Is this all just a coincidence? They threw two darts looking for two best attorneys, and it just so happened to have been coincidentally the two attorneys who allegedly worked together to cut workers out of their rights. And if these were the two attorneys, if this was the reputation of these two attorneys, is that a position you would want them in? You know, would you want to pick attorneys who are loophole finders and who are going back to be loophole finders after the job to go try to seal up the loopholes? Does that make sense? You tell me in the comments, what do you think? I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you in the next video.